Hello my friends, welcome to today's tutorial. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this adorable gnome Christmas card. So I have sketched out my image on a piece of scrap paper, and then I took a pencil, scribbled the back of the paper, and now I taped it to my watercolor paper, and this is simply very inexpensive Canson watercolor paper. So I'm going to trace the image, and the scribbling that I did in the back will transfer it onto my watercolor paper. Very simple. I prefer to do a quick sketch and without very much detail, and then transfer it onto my watercolor paper. I can draw, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I prefer to paint, so I get through it as quickly as possible. So I've marked off where the edges of my card will be, and I'm using a painting from my previous video to create the border. And I'm not too concerned really about this border. I just want kind of like a guideline because I'm going to crop it later on after the painting is finished. But I just want to know how far out I can go. So now I don't have my kneaded eraser, and all I have is the eraser on this pencil, which doesn't do a great job. So I'm hoping that the paint will cover up most of my pencil lines because they're going to be dark. So you can see here that I am using clean water to wet down the area of the gnome's hat. And with this inexpensive watercolor paper, you really have to work quickly because it dries very quickly. So I'm just picking up a really bright red, and you can see that my paper is nice and wet. As soon as I touched my brush to the paper, the paint began to spread in the areas that I had wet down prior. So now I'm just carefully going around the holly leaves and berries that I am going to place on his hat. And I'm going to continue filling in the area with the red paint. I also have selected a darker, deeper red that I will use to create the creases and shadows in his hat. And you can see here I've picked up the darker red. My paper is kind of drying a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, the paper does dry quickly because it's inexpensive paper. So I really wanted these lines to blend a little bit more, but later you'll see that I just clean my brush in the water and then just smooth out those lines a little bit. And further on in the video, I decided I wanted the hat to be more red than that. So you'll see I go over it again and brighten it up a little bit. But here I am softening up those lines because I didn't want them to be so harsh. Now I made this really, really simple because I want even the beginner to feel that this is achievable. So I kept it really simple. If you are more advanced, of course, you can add as much detail as you like. Now I'm painting the ornament that is hanging from his hat in the same red that I used for the hat. I'm just using it in a thicker consistency, and you can see that I left a little white space to make it look like a little reflection. And then I'm taking the deeper red and I'm just going around the outer edge of the ornament to create a little bit of depth and shadow. Now I'm taking a little bit of the red and I'm using this very kind of peachy pinky color to create his nose, to get a nice flesh tone. And it worked out really well. And as I paint in his nose again, I'm going to leave a little white space to make it look like a little reflection on his nose. And now, as I mentioned, I wanted to deepen the red of the hat, so I am simply picking up the red that I used for the first layer. I did not re-wet the paper, or rather pre-wet the paper. I'm just using the wet paint on the dry paper, and I've diluted it a little bit with the water on the brush, and I'm just filling in the area. And you can see that most of the shadow that I added for the creases is still visible, but I will go back and enhance them just a little bit more. So here I am adding just a little bit more of that deeper red to enhance those creases. And because the paper is still wet from the second layer of the red color, it will blend nicely. So now I'm picking up a little bit of this beigey color and a gray, and I'm mixing them together because I want to create a little bit of shadow in his beard, because his beard is white, but I want there to be a little bit of shadow so that you can see that it's a beard. And I'm just creating very simple brush strokes, short ones, some longer, and I am curving them in the direction I want it to appear his beard is going in. I hope that makes sense. And I just added a couple of strokes, and that is more than enough. Now here I started to paint in the holly in his hat, but of course the red was still wet, so my color started to bleed. So I had to clean up where it started bleeding and leave it alone until it finished drying. So now this palette of Muño pan paints, which I've told you a million times, is the perfect set for the beginner. I think it's maybe $45, but you get 48 pans, and there's a wonderful variety of colors in here, and there are a couple of metallic paints, which is what I am using to paint the top of the ornament. I'm using a gold. Now here I'm mixing a little bit more of the gray and that beigey color, and I'm adding a few more strokes to enhance the beard. And now I want the background to be black because I want the red to really pop. And you know, if you follow my channel, I love a black background. I think it makes everything pop. It enhances the painting so much, in my opinion. So if you don't want to do it with watercolor, you can do it with acrylic paint. You can do it with a Posca pen. I'm just using the watercolor to create a black background. And I'm being very careful as I go around the hat and the ornament. I'm using the tip of my brush to get into all those little nooks and crannies. And then once I get all the black down, I can go back and touch up any areas that I see that remained white. Now I'll tell you, after I finished the video and I cropped my card, I decided that I wanted to use a black micron pen to kind of define a little bit of the details, like the little berries and the holly leaves. So I did do a little very light outline in some areas, and you'll see it if you stick around until the end of the video when I post a picture of the finished painting. And of course you don't have to do that. It was just something that I thought would enhance the painting. So now I've picked up a nice deep shade of green, and I am filling in the little holly leaves. Very, very easy. And I'm also going to use a little bleed-proof white later on to add the string from his hat to the ornament. If you don't have bleed-proof white, you can use a white Posca pen with a fine nib to create the string, or any white acrylic paint pen that you have with a nice fine nib. So here I am with the bleed-proof white. This stuff is great. Everybody should have a jar of this. It lasts forever, and it shows up really well. So here you see I just freehanded a string. I think it's pretty straight. And I created a couple of little loops at the bottom so it looks like the ornament was tied to the string. And then I'm using a tiny little brush to create what may look like snowflakes or little stars in the black area. Also, once I finished this painting, I did take a gold acrylic paint pen and I created a nice little simple border around the edge. And once you've completed your card and you've cropped it, you can adhere it to some cardstock and make a really adorable Christmas card, or you can simply frame the painting for the holidays. It's a really cute and simple painting. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you give this a try. Be sure to give me a like, comment, or consider subscribing. And please share your painting, your version of this painting with me on our Facebook group, Vivo Vintage Design Tutorials. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.